Hello, Darklings, Lightlings, and everyone in between. How are you today? I wanted to continue our talk about the Norse mythology and things I've discovered while studying and researching the pantheon, and we're going to talk about creatures and Norse reality or their existence, and a bit about psychology of the Norse and their lifestyle. Okay, so pre-Christian Norse mythology and the culture captivated many people. There's just something about it that's wonderful, mysterious, and magical, and powerful. Today I'm going to be talking about Professor Neil Price's work and the things he discovered in his journey into the life and the mind of Vikings, their stories and their lifestyle. Some archaeological sources for this, in case any of you would like them. Old Norse texts like Eddic poems, the Eddic prose, skaldic poetry, the sagas of Iceland, legendary sagas, the Scandinavian law codes, Anglo-Saxon and continental documents, and the Arab geographical reports. Also, I wanted to add, before we go on, that this year, because his work is a little bit before this discovery, but I know there was a lot of debates in Norse mythology where they say that the Eddas were pretty much like made up stories, but this year they uncovered proof of ancient sites or legendary trading places or even graves of people that were accurately described in these Eddas, so they're starting to look at it as a fact now. Okay, so let's talk about some of the worlds and mainly focusing on creatures in Norse mythology that people in their culture took as fact. So I thought it was important to go over this before we get in detail about the worlds of Yggdrasil, just to have a better understanding of their world and where they were coming from and their beliefs. If you would have told a Nordic person back in the day that there were no such thing as giants, they would probably have laughed or been offended. Like, what do you mean? Like, so this was all actually fact to them. With that being said, let's talk about Asgard, the home of the Aesir. In Asgard, each god had their own halls, lands, and homes, along with temples of worship. Although we do not know factually who the Aesir worshipped, they are one of very few pantheon deities to recognize a higher divinity than themselves. Midgard to the Vikings was a mundane manifestation or reflection to how they understood Asgard to be. They were connected by Bithro, or a rainbow that served as a bridge for the gods to come and go. Jotunheim, or Jotunheimer, actually a real place in northern Norway, but it was the land of the ice giants, very cold, mountainy edged, and very brutal landscapes. Utgarder, or the outer world, a dark, shadowy world of dark spirits, trolls, and scary creatures, was said to be a dark place with many creatures and giants, or even a stronghold for giants, and there would be competitions with Thor and Loki in the outyards of this place. It is one of the last three worlds connected to Yggdrasil, being home of external cosmic forces. Under Midgard was Hel, or Helheim. Hel was the goddess or the ruler of Helheim, which was the land of the dead. Hel was a goddess said to be half beautiful and half decayed. Below Helheim is Nifl or Niflheim, a very misty, deeper realm of Helheim, said to have 9 levels of the underworld going down 9 levels underground to the inner earth. I thought that was really interesting, especially when you read stories such as Dante's Inferno. Nobody really knows how these worlds are laid out on Yggdrasil, and there are more worlds. We will be getting into that next. But it is the world ash tree that connects these 9 realms together and gives the Norse access to them. Many have speculated, and I believe in many existing realms, and the Norse believed in many as well, way more than the 9 typically mentioned. Scholars speculate it could be other realms of existence, other dimensions we can access, or even the universe and the constellations and planets. For the Norse, this was how the world was. They were so in tune. It was more looked at as their reality versus beliefs. Things that just were, and they would not question it, just as they wouldn't question the existence of the sea or the trees or the grass. They also believed in many races of beings, and they were as real to them as their families or neighbors or anybody in their community. Let's get into some of the creatures. So we have gods and goddesses. We have servants of gods. And just a pause here, we're not going to be able to get into all the creatures today because it's so vast. But I want to give you an idea of these creatures that are commonly mentioned or seen in Norse mythology. So we have beings in the sky and the cosmos, giants, supernatural nature beings, but to them it wasn't supernatural, like elves, dwarves, nymphs, fairies, and they had land spirits and dark spirits. These were a part of their world, and it was not separate in their world. The gods are well known, and so are their stories. The Norse's relationship with the gods was complex, opposite of how we view a god today. You did not have to like or even agree with the gods, but they knew to respect and acknowledge them as very real natural beings who were demanding. And the Norse appeased the gods' demands and accepted them to keep the type of balance in their reality. If they refused, then they could reap consequences that shifts their reality. So the servants of the gods, mostly animals like Odin's ravens and wolves, Thor's goats, Freya's cats, Frey's boar, or Tyr, also with the boar, Heimdall's ram, and so on. They are symbolic in many ways to the gods, and they liked sacrifices of their preferred animals. The Valkyries, or the Valkyrier, it means choosers of the slain. Valkyries would descend onto the battlefields to choose the best warriors slain in battle, then bring them to be shared between Odin and Freya's halls in Asgard. Most know it as Valhalla or Valhor. The true form of Valkyrie was not the beautiful woman depicted today, like if you Google search and you see all these like really hot, beautiful, which I love them. I love that depiction. But to the Norse, they were originally depicted as very dark in appearance, kind of what we might consider demonic in nature. They were the embodiment or the personification of what war was, and that brutality and that energy. Nornir, or the Norns, keep the world tree going. They famously live at the bottom and weave all the fates. Their names translate as past, present, and future. They nurture the entire universe. Theoretically, they are said to weave tapestries for each human, and they are never exactly the same. At the end of the human's life, they cut the last thread of the person's tapestry. Their fingernails are said to be carved with runes. Each race in existence has their own norns as well, even for the gods. The giants, or the Jötnar, the giants were embodiments of wild nature and aggressive, nasty creatures, said to be unrelentable to human experiences, said to be dirty, loud, and hairy, and sometimes stupid. But other giants were very smart and cunning, but they do not like people. Dwarves were daily nature beings with important roles in their culture and stories of the gods. All of Tolkien's names of the dwarves in his books and such were the actual documented names of dwarves in Norse texts, and it was noted that there were over 200 names, including the name Gandalf. The dwarves were wise, helpful, devious guardians of knowledge and creators of tools, alchemy, jewelry, metals, and gifts for the gods like Thor's hammer or Odin's spear. They live in the mountains and often ask women for payments with sexual favors, especially Freya. They interacted with humans, and in the Viking Age, size was not documented. Later medieval age depicted them as short-statured. The Alfar, or elves, are hidden people, or Hildifur. It is what the Icelandic people called the elves. They are known to live underground or under rocks, etc., and they have a lot of contact with the gods. There's a story that goes, when Loki is in one of his moods, he'll go around Asgard and kind of roast the gods. He'll insult them. And one insult that he commonly brings up to Freya is he mentions in a story that she slept with every elf in Midgard. It tells us that the elves were sexual and beautiful and interacted with humans as well, even sacrifices or offerings of animal blood. They're fortune bringers, good and bad. They're healers, animal experts, magic, and they lived all around the humans in nature. The trolls, or the pures, creatures made of rock or lives in a rock or under them, described as deviant, nasty creatures, sometimes associated with the dead, and dwell in mountains, springs, rivers, and underground. The trolls are still believed in Scandinavia and some places to this day. Some experts suggest that the trolls were a type of Neanderthal in the day, and perhaps that is what the Norse were referring to, but we don't know that for sure. Next are the land spirits, elemental spirits that are literally everywhere and in everything in nature. They believed in high respect for these spirits and would accommodate them lest they fall into misfortune in their lives and lands. Mythology is what we created modernly. To our ancestors or the ancient ones, these were fact, these were actual. I find it interesting that it was their reality, and modernly mainstream science tends to, downsize that. It's too supernatural, it's too incredible. So I find it interesting that only modern people see this as mythology. In our next video, we will go over the worlds in Yggdrasil and get a little more in detail about each world, and maybe even explore some mythology stories with the gods and pertaining to them worlds. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know, and we'll also be getting into Norse life after death soon, and the Sami. Well, much love, you guys, and until next time.